How to protect yourself from unpaid healthcare bills and collections. A guide to request your medical records, challenge HIPAA violations, and threaten legal action. We are not attorneys, and this should not be considered legal advice. Our agenda for this presentation. Overview. Step 1. Request your medical records and disclosures. Step 2. Ask for HIPAA compliance documentation. Step 3. Threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. Conclusion. This guide will help you protect your rights in healthcare. You will learn how to request your full set of medical records, including disclosures, to verify the accuracy of your bills. You will also learn how to ask for complete documentation on HIPAA compliance, and how to use this information to challenge claims and threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. Protect yourself from unfair, unethical, and illegal practices by healthcare providers, insurance companies, and debt collectors. Overview. Step 1. Request your medical records and disclosures. The first step to protect yourself from unpaid healthcare bills and collections is to request your full set of medical records and disclosures from your healthcare provider. This is your right under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, which gives you the right to access and inspect your own health information. You can request your records in writing, by phone, or online, depending on the provider's policy. You may have to pay a reasonable fee for copying and mailing the records, but you cannot be denied access to your records for any reason. Your medical records should include all the information related to your diagnosis, treatment, and billing, such as medical history, physical examination, and laboratory results, prescriptions, medications, and immunizations, consultations, referrals, and follow-ups, procedures, surgeries, and anesthesia, discharge summary and instructions, itemized bill and explanation of benefits. Your disclosures should include all the information related to who has accessed, used, or shared your health information, such as the name and address of the person or entity that received your information, the date and purpose of the disclosure, the type and amount of information disclosed, the legal basis for the disclosure, the expiration date of the authorization for the disclosure. You should receive your records and disclosures within 30 days of your request, or 60 days if the records are not readily accessible. If your request is denied, you have the right to appeal the decision and file a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights, OCR, of the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. Step 2. Ask for HIPAA compliance documentation. The second step to protect yourself from unpaid healthcare bills and collections is to ask your healthcare organization for complete documentation on their HIPAA compliance. HIPAA is a federal law that sets standards for the privacy and security of health information and requires healthcare providers, insurance companies, and their business associates to comply with the rules and regulations. HIPAA compliance documentation should include a written notice of privacy practices that explains how your information is used and disclosed, and how you can exercise your rights. A written security policy that describes how your information is protected from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. A written breach notification policy that outlines how you will be notified in case of a breach of your information. A written risk assessment that identifies and evaluates the potential risks and vulnerabilities to your information. A written risk management plan that implements security measures and controls to mitigate the risks and vulnerabilities. A written training program that educates the staff and contractors on the HIPAA rules and regulations. A written audit program that monitors and evaluates the effectiveness of the security measures and controls. A written incident response plan that outlines how the organization is to respond to and report any security incidents or breaches. You have the right to request and receive the HIPAA compliance documentation from your healthcare organization, and they have the obligation to provide it to you within a reasonable time frame. If they fail or refuse to provide you with the documentation, you have the right to file a complaint with the OCR of the HHS and to threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. Step 3. threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. The third step to protect yourself from unpaid healthcare bills and collections is to threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. If you have received your medical records and disclosures, and your HIPAA compliance documentation, you can use them to challenge the accuracy and validity of your bills, and to expose any violations of your privacy and security rights. You can also use them to leverage your position and negotiate a lower or fairer payment plan, or to dispute the debt entirely. If you have evidence that your healthcare organization has violated HIPAA, you can sue them for damages under the Consumer Protection Act, which prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices in trade or commerce. Some examples of violations that may constitute unfair or deceptive acts or practices are overcharging, double billing, or billing for services not rendered or authorized, using or disclosing your information for purposes not related to your treatment, payment, or healthcare operations, failing to protect your information from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. This does not mean that your information had to have been exposed, but just that they have failed to provide adequate protections per an industry-acceptable framework for security. Failing to notify you of a breach of your information. Failing to provide you access to your records or disclosures. Failing to comply with your requests or rights under HIPAA. If you have evidence that your healthcare organization has violated the Consumer Protection Act, you can sue them for damages under the same law, which allows you to recover actual damages, statutory damages, punitive damages, attorney fees, and injunctive relief. Some examples of violations that may constitute actual damages are financial losses due to overpayment, underpayment, or non-payment of your bills, credit damage due to negative reporting or collections, emotional distress due to harassment, intimidation, threats or fear, and emotional harm caused due to the dangers that would occur due to their failure to properly protect your most private information, physical harm due to delayed, denied, or substandard care, identity theft or fraud due to misuse or exposure of your information. To threaten legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act, you should send a demand letter to your healthcare organization, stating the following: the facts and circumstances of your case, including the dates, amounts, and details of your bills, records, disclosures, and compliance documentation. The evidence and arguments that support your claim that they have violated HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. The damages and remedies that you are seeking, including the amount of money, the type of relief, and the deadline for payment or action. The consequences and risks that they face if they do not comply with your demand, including the possibility of a lawsuit, a complaint to the OCR, a negative publicity, and a loss of reputation. The contact information and instructions for how to respond to your demand, including the name, address, phone number, and email of your attorney or representative. You should send the demand letter by certified mail, return receipt requested, and keep a copy for your records. You should also follow up with a phone call or an email to confirm that they have received your letter and to negotiate a settlement or resolution. If they do not respond or comply with your demand, you should proceed with filing a lawsuit or a complaint with the OCR. In conclusion, you can protect yourself from unpaid healthcare bills and collections by requesting your full set of medical records and disclosures, asking for HIPAA compliance documentation, and threatening legal action for violations of HIPAA and the Consumer Protection Act. By doing so, you can verify the accuracy and validity of your bills, challenge the claims and practices of your healthcare organization, and seek damages and remedies for your losses and injuries. You have rights and options to protect yourself from unfair and illegal practices by healthcare providers, insurance companies, and debt collectors, and you should exercise them to the fullest extent.